Because if your first thought is, well, I have a flush, I must check raise, of course, then you might be wrong here.
Hey, it's Milko from Pokercode. Matthias Eibinger recently played some of the highest stakes on GGPoker, and he reviewed his hands exclusive for the Pokercode community. If you like this content, please leave a like and subscribe, and enjoy the show.
Hi Pokercode community, Matthias here. As some of you might know, I have played a few sessions of Nosebleeds Cash lately, like 500 1000, and there was even one session of 500,000 2000, a free blind game. And of course I had some interesting spots as well, which I want to go through and study and learn from them. And some of them I want to share with you. So this one is one of the more straightforward hands. Nevertheless, it was still interesting, and so I want to share it with you. Oh, Konstantin, a very good hold'em rag, opens the button, 2.5 big blinds. The good thing for me here is, even though it's cash game, it has antes. What does it mean? It's a lot closer to tournaments, and in this environment I'm a lot more comfortable. I know the ranges with antes, what to defend, and post flop I studied everything up to 100 VP, very extensive, so yeah. So this board could get tricky. Let's take a look. I wanted to say, fortunately, he checked back, but I have such a strong hand that I can defend anyway. So it doesn't really matter for me if he checks back or if he makes a c-bet. Anyway, as played, it was check on the flop. And here I have my first point of decision. I think at this point it's a pretty clear value bet. And the size, I was thinking around 2/3. I looked it up in the solver and it's confirmed 2/3 is a good size. Some of my hands want to use smaller, 1/3 is also very often used. And some hands I can also go a bit bigger and polarize a bit more between like very strong or draw. But for my specific hand, 2/3 is really like the most preferred size. Feels also very natural, and the reason I have actually analyzed this hand is for the river, and this is also what I want to share with you. Because I made a bet on the turn, as we've seen, a value bet with the 8, and now the river is very awkward in a way that my top pair is not even close to as strong as it was on the turn. However, if we take a look at the button range, it's not like that he connects great with the 7, right? He does not often have a 2-pair now with the 7. I mean, of course, he could have 8-7, but he would probably c-bet that hand. What about 7-5 suited? Yes, he could have it. 7-4 suited, he could have it as well. But like you can already see, it's like only a handful of hands that really can have a 2-pair with the 7. And in terms of straights, in the 6-9 of hearts, so it is possible that he improved, but still I think against the button specifically, who has a loose range, my hand is still kind of strong here, and the question was, should I go for another value bet? And I decided yes, against the button I have to. He has ace-5, ace-4, ace-deuce, king-5, queen-4 suited. He has so much 5x and 4x and deuce-x, and even if he has the 8, like let's say 10-8 suited, I'm ahead as well, that I just have to go for a value bet. So I was right with that assumption, but we have one more question left to answer. When we want to make a value bet here, what size do we choose? Because if I make a big bet now, let's say $12,000, it's very hard to get a call from a hand like ace-4. So I need to choose a proper size, and I was thinking about going like super small, a block bet like 15-20%. Then I could go a bit bigger, let's say third pot, or trying the very greedy half pot approach here, and I decided for the smallest here. I bet 2,500, and this is the takeaway here, that the solver disagrees, and the solver actually makes it like super easy for us humans to play here. Why? Because the solver just says, well, if we have the 8 with a very strong kicker, ace, kicker, king and queen, or check, I forgot, but it's not that relevant. Then we go for third pot, means I should bet $5,000 here. And we have a weaker kicker, like check 8, 10, 8, 9, 8. Well, then we make this very small size I have chosen. So very straightforward strategy here. Weak top pair, very small, stronger top pair, a little bit bigger, and that's how we find the optimal line and the optimal size. This hand starts pretty similar as yesterday. Mr. Constantine opens again in the button. I have a hand to defend with antis, and I flop the world. Facing the c-bet, this time it might not be as straightforward as you think. Because if your first thought is, well, I have a flush, I must check raise, of course, then you might be wrong here. And the reason for it is that I will not raise every flush here. In fact, probably more than half of my completed flushes, I will play them passive, and I want to share you why. So we are playing loose range into loose range here, right? I defend every pair. I defend so many hearts here. Hands with one heart. Let's say I had ace-7 with the 7 of hearts. I'm calling it. So if every single strong hand, and with strong here I mean a finished flush, if I raise every single of my flushes here, then it just doesn't really work with my defending here. So this is one reason why I must just call some of the flushes here. Another that was point 1. Next question now is, what are the flushes that we want to raise and what are the ones that we play more passive? And the answer is that if we have a very strong flush, let's say a king high flush, this is a good one to raise, because that in case your opponent has a flush as well, then you will be on the good side of the cooler, right? So the stronger flush is a better raise typically, but not only that, he will have a lot of hands, let's say queen check with the jack of hearts. So even though I have a flush right now, maybe he catches up and beats me on the turn and on the river. And that's another advantage of making a big pot when you have a very strong flush, like a king high flush, because you will stay ahead typically. And if I have a hand like this and there's another heart falling down, then I already created a big pot and now probably have to give it up against high pressure as well. So this is why I just decided to check call here, and the solver likes it. Turn goes check, check. And now we again find the main reason for why I saved this hand. Same as yesterday's hand, it's the river. And I must admit, I was not very sure in-game what to do. And what is the reason? The reason is that I had too many thoughts in-game and I wasn't sure like which one has the strongest weight, let's call it like this. So what was my thought number 1? And this is always the way I'm thinking about poker. I'm thinking about equities. So is this river better for me or is this river better for him? And the answer here is that the river is a lot better for me. Why is that? Because I call so many hands with a heart on the flop. So if there's now a 4-cut flush, I just have a lot of flushes in my range. On the other hand, he doesn't have that many, because if he had the flush on the turn, he would not check it back. And if he had just one hearts, let's say king 8 with the king of hearts or whatever, he would barrel his hand very, very often. And that just makes it very hard for him to have a flush. That means that he had a one heart hand on the turn, which he did not barrel and play passive. Of course he can have it, but not even close to the frequency of how often I have it. And in fact, I worked out the numbers if you're interested in that. 48% of time I will have the flush here, and only around 20% of time he has the flush. He has a flush here. And that thing I knew. And if in terms of equity, a card is so good for me, then I should bet it. But there were also other thoughts ahead. So what about his checking back range on the turn? I was thinking he has a bunch of nothing here. What about ace-7 of clubs? He checks it back on the turn, right? Alongside many other hands. And I thought it's a great opportunity for him to bluff it now on the king, a high card, an overcard, flush arriving. So this was another thought. Trying to be tricky, trying to go into the bluff catch mode. And unfortunately, I decided for the second, which like sounds logical, but is just wrong. The first factor is way stronger. If a river is so good for us, then we have to play with a lot of bets. And that just that applies to my entire strategy here, not just this specific hand. Like if I had the 4, if I have the 5, I want to bluff them. I want to really use this great river for me. I know that very often my 5 is not good, especially on the king. He has top pairs, he has straights, like the king is great for him, and I must take the initiative here. I must bluff a lot, and therefore I must also value bet aggressive. And therefore argument 1, the higher equity, has way stronger impact here, and overall it results in a better strategy. So my hand should be a pure bet pretty much, and the bet size doesn't matter that much. I can go with 1/3 pot bets. I can even go with 2/3 pot bets. And now you might think, isn't that very aggressive to bet like $7,500 with just 8 high here, 8 high flush? But the answer is no, because we know that he has the flush only around 20% of time. So it's a very low risk, and most of the time we will just be ahead here. And he still has sets, or well, maybe not that many sets, but he has straights, he has 2 pairs, and so we still put him in a very tricky situation. And so the answer is I played this hand wrong. In hindsight, however, it is pretty funny because okay, I thought it went check for a second. No, it didn't. So anyway, yeah, I check called here. Would have lost anyway if I value bet. Of course, he would call me, but my target is always to play the hand as good as possible. That was my takeaway, and I wanted to share it with you. Take care.